What's up, YouTube, and welcome to Travel Adventures with Eric B. and Happy Canada Day. And today we're going to talk about 12 things that you should know, country of Canada. Follow along and let's get the adventure started. Welcome to Travel Adventures with Eric B. I'm Eric B. If you're new here, I offer travel advice. I'm a solo traveler and I do vlogs to help you travel better and more efficiently. Next thing you should know about Canada is massive. And there's a lot of wide open space in this country. So landmass wise, the U.S. is slightly bigger than Canada only because of Alaska. But in terms of the continental U.S., Canada is much bigger. But much of the country is spread out in areas where it's not even accessible, especially the northern parts where there's extreme weather temperatures. So most all the major cities are all located in the southern part of the country, in particular, mostly on the eastern part of the country. If you're headed to Canada and you're looking to do road trips, I suggest maybe do an East Coast trip, do the Quebec provinces, maybe do Toronto and Ottawa, maybe even go to Prince Edward's Island and Newfoundland and that beautiful area, or if you want to stay out on the West Coast, do the Vancouver and the Victoria and Banff area, or maybe go in the middle and hit up Winnipeg or Saskatchewan or one of those places. Next thing you should know about Canada is the national food is poutine. Well, I was told by some Canadian friends it's pronounced correctly, it's Poutine. Even though I've always called it poutine. I think we've all pretty much called it poutine, but I've heard it's Poutine. So basically it's cheese curds on some fries with some gravy, and there are different types. They make it in different ways. In Canada, you go all over the country, they serve it, whether it's here in Vancouver, even though it started in Quebec side, it's all over the country. So yeah, it's the dish that you'll find all over the country, and you should definitely try it out. What you should know about Canada is oftentimes you'll hear the languages of Canada is English and French. But unless you're in Quebec or close to Quebec, you're not going to hear a lot of French. It is fun to go to Quebec, Montreal, Quebec City, and so on. And here, even the homeless people speak English and French. But in most of Canada, the language is pretty much just English. So you're not going to probably be able to use your French a whole lot if you're far away from Quebec, like right here in British Columbia. So do keep that in mind. You should know about Canada is the number one sport is hockey. So if you're coming from Europe, the number one sport is football, or as us Americans call it, soccer. In America, the number one sport is American football. So when you're in Canada, hockey is bigger than anything here. They love their hockey. They love their national team. They love their NHL team. They love their minor league teams. Hockey is a way of life here. You got to go visit the Hockey Hall of Fame too if you're in Toronto, because the Hockey Hall of Fame is a great experience whether you like hockey or not. It's a lot of fun in that place. It goes a lot into the history of the game in terms of NHL, national hockey team, and just other different things in general about the sport. So you definitely want to go check out the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto, and you definitely need to understand that hockey is big, like really big in Canada, like American football big. You should know about Canada is I highly recommend if you're in Toronto, make sure you check out great museum culture there, especially the ROM Museum. The Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto is fantastic. One of the best museums I've ever been to, and also the Hockey Hall of Fame is fantastic out in Toronto. Another one of the best museums I've ever been to. So if you're out in that part of the country, you definitely want to go to Toronto and check out the museum culture there. You should know about Canada is the difference between the money. Okay, so the US dollar versus the Canadian dollar. Currently, at this moment, at the end of April 2024, one Canadian dollar equals 73 US cents. Therefore, when you see a price in Canadian money, it's going to look higher than it actually is in US dollars. So if your hotel says 117 Canadian dollars, it's actually going to be a little bit less than that. You'd have to do a conversion on it into US. Also, there's no such things as pennies in Canada, so the coins mean a little bit more than they mean in the US, so do keep that in mind as well with the money. There's no pennies, so yeah, there's $1 coins and $2 coins called the loonie and the toonie. So you could probably figure out which one is a loonie and which one is a toonie, but the money is definitely different when you come to Canada. The thing you should know about Canada, and this is true for most of the world unless you're coming from the US, is that Canada used a metric system. We use the Imperial system in the US, so if you're coming from the US, it's a different system. So famously, I'm driving on a road trip to Toronto with my sister. My sister looking at the speedometer. She's looking at the sign thinking, you know, the kilometers is miles per hour, and she's driving a little bit faster than she should be. And I had to tell her, hey, we're not in miles per hour anymore. And the only reason we know what liters are in the US is because of 2 liters, our drinks. So yeah, we use a sort of the outdated Imperial system instead of the metric system. So you need to know that everything's going to be different in terms of yards, inches, all of this stuff when you come here to Canada. Thing you should know about Canada, similar to the USA, Canada does have a tipping culture, and Canada also has sales tax. So if you're coming from Europe or somewhere like that, you may not be used to the high tipping culture and the sales tax and everything. But similar to the US, I would say you probably tip a little less in Canada than you do in the US, because the US has become upward of 18 to 20%. With Canada though, you want to tip about 15% here as well. So also tipping culture is similar, and as well also have sales tax and things like that. So the price that you see is not the final price. Very similar to the US. I know a lot of people from Europe, they come to the US, other countries, they come to the US, they say, well, why does this say $1.15, $1.19, but when I go to the register, it's not $1.19. It's very similar in Canada. There's also sales tax added. So tax is a thing here, just similar to the US, so just keep that in mind. You know about Canada, if America runs on Dunkin' and Starbucks, of course, Canada definitely runs on Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons has a lot of locations. There's a lot up in the Northeast too, like in the Buffalo area and places like that, but it is a huge Canadian thing, Tim Hortons. If you come to Canada, you got to give Tim's. That is a spot in Canada. You should know about Canada, it's about the people. The people here are very nice. You will hear a lot of sorries here. You'll hear a lot of, you know, people want to help you out. The people here, very similar to the U.S. in that way, depending on what part of the U.S. you go to. People are very friendly, they're talkative. But like I said, you will hear a lot of sorries and things like that. And a lot of times when you come from places in Europe and things like that, you know, the culture is a little different. You may not hear as much sorries and excuse me's and stuff like that, but people here can be very apologetic. So that is an actual thing. I know that's like a stereotype people say, but you will get that a lot here, a lot of sorries. Next thing you should know, so if you're in the 3 major cities, Toronto, Montreal, or Vancouver, you can get around pretty good on the light rails, the subways, the metros, whatever. Those systems work pretty well, and you want to avoid all the traffic and everything to get around. If you're in a medium-sized city, more like a Quebec City or Ottawa, somewhere like that, you're going to mostly drive or catch the buses. But if you're somewhere else, a smaller place, like it's a really small place, this is a big old country, so you're going to do a lot of driving. So expect to rent a car if you're not in one of the major cities and do a lot of driving, because everything's spread out and everything's a good distance away. So expect to do a lot of driving when you're in Canada. But if you're in one of the 3 main cities at least, you can get around pretty well via the public transportation on the trains. Next thing you should know about Canada, people will tell you that Canada is so cold. But Canada's not really that much difference in the U.S. in terms of cold. The really, really cold parts of Canada, you're not going to go to anyway, because half of those aren't accessible and aren't very populated either. So the big cities that you're going to go to in Canada are going to be very similar to the U.S. So if you're in Toronto area, you know, Toronto is just a little bit north of Buffalo, so you know it's going to get really cold. They do a good job of, when the winter time comes around, making it accessible and able to do things still. But yeah, it's going to be similar to Buffalo. Montreal's like a little bit above New Hampshire, so you know those areas are going to be cold. And if you're in the Vancouver area, that area is similar to Seattle, so you know, right above that area, so you're not going to get a lot of snow there. It does get a little bit chilly there and everything, but unless you're in the mountains, you're not going to get a lot of snow. Towards the middle of the country, more like Minnesota, North Dakota type weather towards the middle. So yeah, you do get a lot of snow there, but it's not like polar bears or anything crazy like that. So don't go overboard thinking that Canada is like snows so much more and gets so much colder than the US, because it's just not true. And that's all, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I ask that you please hit the like, please hit the subscribe button, please hit the bell notification so you can know when I have more videos coming out. And as always, remember, live today, grow today, tomorrow's never guaranteed. Peace and travel. Lots and lots of travel. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please hit the like, share, subscribe button. Leave any comments below. I love to interact. And if you would like to help the channel continue to grow, please consider hitting the join button and becoming a member of the Peace Corps and help us to continue to grow as a travel community.